I never will forget the first time I was allowed to go to the store by myself. Yeah, I was about 12 years old. 1975, right over here in Mainville. If you go here in Goshen, if you go about 7 miles north, Goshen Murdoch, and that runs into State Route 48, and you get to the town of Mainville, Warren County. Town of Mainville, at the red caution light on the corner, there's Mainville Corner Market. When I was a boy, it was called Mainville Corner Store. Same building, like a convenience store. Anyway, it was at my grandma's house, and I never will forget it. My dad gets in this billfold. He said, "Greg," he said, "son," he said, "you're getting old enough now to go to the store by yourself." He said, "Go up here and get me and you a pop. Ask your mom if she wants anything. Pop and snacks. And, ask grandma, of course." And we sat on the porch. In those days, you didn't sit in the living room like you do today. No. So I went into the kitchen where my mom and grandma was and asked them if they wanted anything. And I come back on the porch, and Dad hands me a $5. In those days, food and snacks was cheap. Dad hands me a $5 bill. I never will forget that. I take off, and I'm 12 years old. It's 1975. I get on the sidewalk. I can still remember those steps, every step on that sidewalk. I felt a mile. I felt big. I felt a mile high. I was going to the store by myself. In those days, there was no such thing as pedophiles. Am I saying that right? There was no such thing as, you didn't fear kidnapping. You didn't fear pedophiles. There was, that word didn't even exist. The 1970s felt perfectly safe. It really did. You didn't fear, if somebody stopped in the car, you didn't fear that. They just asked them for directions. That's just the way the 1970s was. Anyway, I get to the store, buy a pop and snacks and pay for it, walk out with the bag. In those days, it wasn't plastic, it was paper bag. Walk out with paper bag. And of course, in those days, pop come in glass bottles. I never forget when my dad says, "Whatever you do, hold the bottom." In those days, you had to hold the bottom of the bag in case you didn't know that. Yeah, because if that paper was a bit damp, slightest wet, your glass bottle of pop would break, would tear through the paper bag, and I've had that happen to me. Mom and Dad and me. That's happened a number of times. You had to be. So in those days, you had to hold the bottom of the bag because there was no plastic in those days. No plastic bags. And I remember holding that dearly, holding that bottom so the paper wouldn't tear. Yeah, just the way the 1970s was. But anyway, that felt so big. I felt so big going to the store for the first time. I was about 12. Dad said, "You're getting old enough now." There was no fear. There was just no fear of pedophile. Like today, it's all screwed up. This world, it's all screwed up. It was a much, much, much better time back in those days. Much better. You didn't hear the news. There was no CNN 24-hour news. Thank God. Life was harder because we only had 4 channels on television. But when I look back at it all, I'm so glad it happened that way, or was that way. You didn't hear the BS of the world. The world was a much quieter place when I was growing up. It was a much, much better place than what it is today. Today it's all this garbage and junk. There was no such thing as garbage and junk when I was growing up. Just 4 channels on TV, and that was a blessing in disguise. When I look back at it all, I'm glad that's the way it was. Anyway, the first time I ever went to the store by myself, 1975, I can still remember every step. That was a fond memory, the first time I went to the store by myself. And I felt so big. I really and truly did. God bless those memories.